The people of the Kingdom of Kongo spoke Kikongo, a Bantu language that remains widely spoken today across Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and parts of Gabon. Kikongo was more than just a means of communication. It was a tool of governance, diplomacy, trade, and religion. Kikongo had multiple dialects across the 6 provinces of the Kongo Kingdom, but the central administration in Mbanza, Congo, standardized a courtly form of Kikongo, creating a lingua franca that unified the kingdom. Congo society valued oral culture deeply. History, law, and cosmology were passed down through proverbs, riddles, praise songs, and storytelling, performed by griots and court historians, Nganga Marinda. This oral archive preserved collective memory long before written texts. After the arrival of the Portuguese in 1483, Kikongo was written down using the Latin alphabet, and some nobles became literate in both Kikongo and Portuguese. Remarkably, the first catechisms in Kikongo were printed in the early 1600s in Rome and Lisbon, one of the first African languages ever put into print. Fun fact: Kikongo words have survived in the Americas due to the Atlantic slave trade. Words like Nzambi, God, Nkisi, spiritual charm, and Bantu, people, appear in Afro-Brazilian religions like Candomblé and Palo Monte in Cuba, showing how the Kongo language shaped global culture. Kongo culture was deeply spiritual, organized around a cosmological vision known as the Kongo cosmogram, Dikenga. This sacred symbol, a cross inside a circle, represented the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, as well as the meeting of the physical and spiritual worlds. Nzambi Mpungu, the supreme creator god, distant and all-powerful. Ancestral spirits, Bakulu, highly revered. Ancestors were believed to influence daily life, protect families, and guide justice. Nkisi, sacred objects or charms infused with spiritual power, often sealed with nails, shells, or herbs. These were used for healing, justice, and protection. When Christianity arrived, the Kongo elite saw parallels between their cosmology and Christian teachings. For example, the cross of the cosmogram resembled the Christian crucifix, making the religion easier to integrate. As a result, many Kongo people became Christian while still practicing traditional rituals, creating a syncretic culture. Kongo art was symbolic, functional, and spiritual. Some of the most striking examples include Nkisi and Kondi, power figures, wooden statues embedded with nails or blades, activated in rituals to settle disputes or protect communities. Textiles, raffia cloths, and mbongo were woven with complex geometric patterns and used both as clothing and as a form of currency in trade. Elite classes wore embroidered raffia, adorned with shells or beads. Ivory carvings. The Kongo were master carvers of ivory tusks, often inscribing them with spirals, human figures, and cosmological symbols. These tusks were traded to Europe, but also used in sacred rituals. Fun fact: Portuguese traders were astonished by the Kongo raffia textiles, calling them African velvet. These cloths were so fine that they circulated as currency throughout Central Africa. Music and dance were central to Kongo identity, not just entertainment, but ritual, memory, and communication. Drums, ngoma, were the heartbeat of Kongo society, used in war, ceremony, and communication between villages. Other instruments included marimbas, rattles, and ivory trumpets. Songs were often structured in call and response, reinforcing community participation and collective rhythm. During funerals and initiations, dancers performed circular dances that mirrored the cosmogram's cycle of life and rebirth, symbolizing the journey between worlds. Many rhythms of the African diaspora, samba in Brazil, rumba in Cuba, and even aspects of gospel music trace their roots to Congo drumming traditions. A blend of kinship ties, community cooperation, and a strong sense of hierarchy guided Congo culture. Society was organized around clans, which determined inheritance, land rights, and marriage alliances. Lineage was matrilineal, meaning children inherited property and status through their mother's line. Visitors to a village were offered food and palm wine before formal conversation. Hospitality was a sacred duty. Marriages were often strategic, linking powerful clans. Bride wealth was paid in raffia cloth, cowrie shells, and sometimes slaves. Ritual specialists, nganga, healers, diviners, and priests guided spiritual life and mediated between the living and the spirit world. The culture of Congo extended far beyond Africa. Due to the Atlantic slave trade, millions of Congo people were forcibly taken to the Americas. Yet they carried their culture with them. In Brazil, Congado festivals still honor African saints and kings. In Cuba, the Palo Monte religion directly draws from Congo cosmology and Nkisi traditions. In the United States, scholars have identified the Congo cosmogram etched into African American graveyards and church basements, showing how Congo spirituality survived enslavement. Fun fact, Kikongo proverbs were used as political tools. For example, "The leopard does not show its teeth in vain" was a warning used by kings before war. These sayings were so powerful that even Portuguese chroniclers wrote them down, fascinated by their depth. Many Kikongo words entered Portuguese and even Brazilian Creole languages. In 1483, Portuguese explorer Diogo Cao reached Congo. Soon, the Mani-Congo and Nzinga Nkubu converted to Christianity, taking the name João I. This alliance brought wealth, guns, and missionaries, but also tension. His son, King Afonso I, embraced Christianity even more, building churches and schools. Fun fact, King Afonso I wrote letters to the King of Portugal in perfect Portuguese, preserved to this day. In one, he begged to stop the illegal slave trade, saying his kingdom was being drained of its people. His letters are some of the earliest African documents in European archives. When the Portuguese reached Central Africa in the late 1400s, the Kingdom of Kongo was at its peak, well-structured, centralized, and wealthy. At first, the encounter was diplomatic. The Portuguese offered iron tools, textiles, horses, beads, and wine, while the Congolese gave copper, ivory, and agricultural products. King Nzinga Nkubu even converted to Christianity, taking the name João I to strengthen relations with Portugal. But soon, this friendship turned dangerous. Portugal's colonies in São Tomé, Brazil, and later the Caribbean needed massive enslaved labor to grow sugar and other cash crops. By the early 1500s, enslaved Africans became the currency that Portugal demanded most from Congo. Neighboring wars, local rivalries, and even palace politics were soon reshaped around this deadly trade. In Congo, most enslaved people were originally war captives, criminals, or debtors within African legal traditions. But as Portuguese demand skyrocketed, this system collapsed. Raids and false accusations became common. People were enslaved for minor disputes or even kidnapped from their homes at night. Oral traditions remember this time as the Great Stealing of People. Congolese kings tried to control the trade. King Afonso I, Nzinga Mbemba, who ruled in the early 1500s, famously wrote to the Portuguese king begging him to stop rogue traders from seizing free citizens. He argued that the slave trade was destroying his kingdom's very fabric, turning noble families into prey and causing villages to live in fear. Despite his Christian alliance with Portugal, Afonso had almost no power to stop it. Fun fact: some letters of King Afonso still exist today, among the earliest written African voices against the transatlantic slave trade. In them, he describes his kingdom being depopulated and laments that noble children were being stolen. Catholic missionaries in Congo often played a dual role. While some genuinely spread faith, others enabled the slave trade by justifying it as saving souls. They argued that enslaved Congolese, who were baptized before transport, would reach heaven even if their earthly lives were in chains. This created a theological smokescreen for mass human trafficking. Hidden detail: Congo priests sometimes tried to resist by holding mass baptisms in secret, believing that if their people were stolen, at least they would carry their spiritual dignity across the ocean. Before Portuguese contact, Congo's economy was vibrant, built on farming, millet, sorghum, palm oil, copper mining, and cloth production, raffia textiles. But as slaves became the main export, local industries weakened. Why produce copper for trade when enslaved people could fetch a higher price in muskets, horses, and wine? This imbalance hollowed out the kingdom's economy. Hidden fact: Congo raffia cloth, once a proud cultural product, became so devalued that Portuguese traders reportedly used it as wrapping material instead of currency. Over the centuries, millions were taken from Central Africa. Families were torn apart, entire villages depopulated. Oral poems and songs in Congo memory still speak of mothers who sang laments of the river, watching ships take their children away. Some even believed the Portuguese ships were giant sea monsters swallowing their people alive. Fun fact: DNA studies today show that a large proportion of Afro-Brazilians and Afro-Caribbeans trace their ancestry back to the Congo region, meaning the lost children of Congo live on across the Americas. As different noble families competed for Portuguese favor, civil wars erupted. Each faction wanted control of trade routes to sell captives. The infamous Battle of Mbwila, 1665, between Congo and the Portuguese, was both a war of independence and a war over trade dominance. The Congolese king Antonio I was killed, his head sent to Portugal, and the kingdom fractured. Hidden detail: after Mbwila, rival Congolese factions began raiding each other for captives, meaning brothers were literally selling brothers to survive. This marked the irreversible decline of the once great kingdom. The slave trade didn't just weaken Congo, it reshaped the entire Atlantic world. Congo people carried their traditions, languages, and spiritual practices into Brazil, Haiti, Cuba, and beyond. The famous Afro-Brazilian martial art capoeira has roots in Congo dance combat forms. Haitian Vodou and Cuban Palo Monte religions also carry Congo cosmology. Even in loss, Congo reshaped global culture. Fun fact: captured Congolese slaves carried their culture across the Atlantic. In Brazil, Haiti, and Cuba, songs, drum patterns, and religious practices can be traced directly back to Congo. Even the famous Haitian Revolution had leaders of Congolese descent, keeping alive their homeland's warrior traditions. The Kingdom of Kongo was not only a center of trade and culture, but also a formidable military power in Central Africa. Its survival for centuries depended on the skill and discipline of its warriors, who defended its provinces, resisted invaders, and even challenged European colonial forces. The king, Mani Kongo, was the supreme war commander. Local nobles, Mwene, controlled provinces and provided levies of soldiers when called. A standing corps of warriors trained near Mbanza, Congo, ensuring the kingdom always had a ready force. Warriors used spears, bows, and iron-tipped arrows, alongside wooden shields covered in animal hide. By the 1500s, through Portuguese contact, Congo soldiers also acquired firearms and learned cavalry tactics. Light protection was preferred, often made from leather, woven raffia, or animal hide. Warriors painted themselves with white clay or red earth before battle for both intimidation and spiritual protection. Fun fact: Portuguese observers noted that Congo soldiers could fight in tight formations, similar to European infantry, and were often fearless in charging against cavalry. Congo warriors believed that battle was both physical and spiritual. Before campaigns, they consulted nganga, ritual specialists, who prepared Nkisi charms for protection and victory. These objects, worn on the body or carried into battle, were believed to shield warriors from bullets and arrows. Drums, ngoma, set the rhythm of war, and songs invoked ancestral spirits. Many warriors entered battle believing they carried the strength of their ancestors, making them nearly impossible to intimidate. When the Portuguese arrived in 1483, the Congo initially welcomed them as allies. The Portuguese supplied guns, cannons, and horses, but they also sought slaves and control. This uneasy relationship led to both cooperation and fierce resistance. Congo warriors fought alongside Portuguese allies in regional wars, gaining firearms and prestige. By the 1600s, the Portuguese began raiding for slaves, destabilizing Congo society. The Mani-Congo tried to limit this, but conflict was inevitable. One of the most famous moments of Congo resistance came during the Battle of Mbwila in 1665. King Antonio I led his army of tens of thousands against the Portuguese and their African allies. Congo warriors fought bravely, surrounding Portuguese musketeers multiple times. Despite their courage, the Portuguese had superior guns and discipline. Antonio I was killed in battle, and his head was sent to Lisbon as a trophy. By the late 1600s, the once mighty Kingdom of Kongo was fractured. The devastating Battle of Mbwila, 1665, had left the kingdom leaderless, with rival claimants to the throne supported by either the Portuguese or local nobles. Civil war, slave raids, and famine spread across the land. Into this world was born Kimpa Vita, a noblewoman from the Ambundu-speaking people of the Congo. From a young age, she was recognized as having a spiritual gift, trained as an Nganga Marinda, a healer and spiritual intermediary. In 1704, Kimpa Vita experienced a profound vision during an illness. She declared that she had been possessed by Saint Anthony of Padua, one of the most beloved saints in Congo Catholicism. From that moment, she proclaimed herself the messenger of God, sent to restore peace, unity, and dignity to Congo. But what made her radical was not only her claim of divine possession, it was her reimagining of Christianity itself. Kimpa Vita's sermons shook the foundations of both European missionaries and Congo elites. She declared that Jesus, Mary, and the apostles were black Africans, and that they had actually lived in Congo, not in distant Palestine. She taught that Mbanza Congo, São Salvador, the ruined old capital, was the true holy city chosen by God. She condemned the slave trade, calling it a sin that corrupted both Portuguese and Congo nobles alike. She urged unity, saying that Congo must heal itself by returning to its spiritual roots, not by bowing to foreign powers. Her message electrified the people. For the first time in decades, peasants, warriors, and even nobles flocked to her cause, seeing in her the promise of a reborn Congo kingdom, a warrior queen without a sword. Though Kimpa Vita did not lead armies in the traditional sense, she became a warrior queen through spirit and defiance. She and her followers reoccupied Mbanza Congo, the abandoned royal city, and began restoring it. She gathered a movement of thousands, many of them warriors tired of civil wars and Portuguese interference. Her presence in the city was both spiritual and political. She crowned herself as God's chosen leader of Congo, challenging both kings and missionaries. In many ways, she was waging war without weapons, uniting a broken nation through faith, identity, and courage. The Catholic missionaries, especially the Capuchins, saw Kimpa Vita as a direct threat. To them, her teachings were heresy. To the Portuguese, her anti-slavery stance was political rebellion. To rival Congo nobles, her call for unity endangered their power. By 1706, her enemies had aligned against her. She was captured by forces loyal to King Pedro IV, a ruler supported by the Portuguese. Kimpa Vita was put on trial for heresy and rebellion. Despite interrogations and threats, she refused to renounce her visions. She declared until the end that she had been chosen to restore Congo's greatness. At the age of just 22, she was burned at the stake on July 2, 1706. But her death did not end her influence. Instead, it turned her into a martyr queen, remembered as a symbol of resistance against colonial domination and the slave trade. Although Kimpa Vita never led cavalry or infantry into battle, she deserves the title Warrior Queen for several reasons. She fought the greatest weapon of colonialism, the manipulation of religion, by making Christianity African, not European. She sought to rebuild Congo's capital, Mbanza, Congo, and restore the kingdom's dignity. She openly condemned the trade that was devastating her people. Like other warrior queens, she chose death rather than submission, inspiring future generations. In Congo, she became a folk hero, remembered in songs, oral traditions, and spiritual practices. Across the Atlantic, in communities of enslaved Congolese, in Brazil, Haiti, and the Caribbean, her story inspired resistance movements and African Christian reinterpretations. Modern scholars see her as one of the earliest African women revolutionaries, a bridge between warrior queens like Nzinga and later anti-colonial leaders. Today, Donna Beatrice Kimpa Vita stands as a warrior queen of faith and defiance, proof that resistance takes many forms, and that the pen, the spirit, and the word can be as powerful as the sword. Although not ruling Congo itself, Queen Nzinga of Ndongo and Matamba, neighboring states with deep cultural ties to Congo, represents the warrior spirit of the Congo people. She fought for nearly 40 years against Portuguese invasion, using alliances, guerrilla warfare, and diplomacy. Many Congo warriors joined Nzinga's armies, finding in her leadership a way to continue resisting Portuguese oppression. Nzinga's use of ambushes, scorched earth tactics, and alliances with escaped slaves became legendary. Her resistance reflected the broader Congo warrior culture, adaptable, resilient, and unwilling to submit. Even after defeats in open battle, Congo resistance never ended. Maroon communities, enslaved Congo warriors who escaped plantations in the Americas, established independent communities in Brazil, Cuba, and Haiti. These Maroons preserved Congo military traditions and fought against European colonists. Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804. Many leaders of the Haitian Revolution, including Boukman Dutty and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, were of Congo descent. The Congo cosmogram, war songs, and Nkisi rituals appeared in slave uprisings, showing how Congo warrior culture influenced the fight for freedom in the New World. What made Congo warriors so remarkable was not just their weapons or tactics, but their unyielding belief in freedom and sovereignty. They fused martial skill with spirituality, making war an extension of cultural identity. They adapted rapidly, learning to fight with both traditional weapons and European guns. Even in the face of defeat, their spirit of resistance survived in religion, music, and diaspora revolts across the Atlantic world. Fun fact, Kimpa Vita's movement inspired later revolts among enslaved Africans in the Americas who saw her as a prophetess. In fact, scholars argue her ideas traveled across the Atlantic, shaping the religious backbone of slave uprisings in the Caribbean. The Kingdom of Kongo, founded around the 14th century, was once a formidable Central African power. Its capital, Mbanza, Kongo, was a bustling city of stone houses, central plazas, and royal courts. The kingdom was highly organized, with provinces, tribute systems, and an elite bureaucracy, but by the 17th and 18th centuries, this power was unraveling. What had been a symbol of African innovation and strength became crippled. By the 19th century, the once great Congo was fragmented. Civil wars, the slave trade, and Portuguese dominance left it weakened. The kingdom officially lost independence when it was absorbed into Portuguese Angola in 1914. After the Battle of Mbuila, multiple royal claimants emerged, each supported by different factions. Some nobles allied with the Portuguese, hoping to gain guns and trade. Others turned to Dutch or African allies to balance the Portuguese. Rival capitals sprang up, each calling itself the true seat of power. For nearly a century, Congo had no single ruler. It fractured into provinces ruled by competing warlords and nobles. The Atlantic slave trade was both the poison and the prize in Congo's collapse. Local elites began raiding villages and selling captives to the Portuguese and other Europeans in exchange for guns, cloth, and luxury goods. Instead of building unity, nobles enriched themselves while weakening the social fabric of Congo. Communities lived in terror as slave raids turned neighbors into enemies. By the late 1600s, Congo was one of the biggest suppliers of enslaved Africans to the Americas, particularly Brazil. Entire generations were torn from their homeland. As we discussed earlier, Dona Beatriz Kimpa Vita tried to heal Congo's divisions by preaching unity, African Christianity, and resistance to the slave trade. But when she was executed in 1706, the dream of restoring Congo as a united kingdom died with her. Her movement had shown the people's longing for unity, but the nobility and Portuguese interference ensured continued fragmentation. By the 18th century, Congo was no longer a centralized empire, but a patchwork of small chiefdoms. The old capital, Mbanza, Kongo, São Salvador, was largely abandoned and in ruins. The Portuguese colony of Angola grew stronger, absorbing territory once controlled by Congo. Repeated slave raids depopulated entire regions, making recovery impossible. In the 19th century, as European powers intensified the scramble for Africa, what remained of Congo was reduced to a vassal and buffer state. Finally, in 1885, during the Berlin Conference, the remnants of Congo's lands were carved into European colonies. Portuguese Angola to the south, Belgian Congo, later the Democratic Republic of Congo, and parts claimed by the French. The Kingdom of Kongo, once a proud and independent African power, was erased from the political map. The Battle of Mbuila destroyed the royal army and monarchy. Competing nobles and provinces weakened unity. Portugal supported rival claimants and kept Congo divided. Local elites prioritized selling captives over rebuilding the kingdom. Millions taken as slaves meant fewer workers, farmers, and warriors at home. By the 19th century, Congo was too weak to resist foreign partition. Although the political kingdom fell, the cultural memory of Congo lived on. In Central Africa, people continued to tell stories of Congo's kings and queens. In the African diaspora, enslaved Congolese carried their traditions to Brazil, Haiti, Cuba, and the Caribbean. Congo's spiritual practices influenced Haitian Vodou, Brazilian Candomblé, and Cuban Palo Monte. Congo warriors fought in the Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804, bringing with them strategies, songs, and spiritual strength. Thus, the fall of the Congo Kingdom was not the end. It transformed into a global African legacy, where its culture shaped both Africa and the Americas. Fun fact: even in defeat, the title of Manikongo continued symbolically. Descendants of the royal family still claim the title today, and ceremonies honoring ancient kings are performed in northern Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo, keeping alive one of Africa's greatest legacies. The Kingdom of Kongo rose from migration and unity, thrived on trade and culture, and fell under the weight of foreign exploitation and internal division. Yet its spirit never died. From Kikongo proverbs to the drumbeats of Brazil and Haiti, Congo's legacy continues to echo across continents. This has been the Calabash Diaries. Until next time, may your path be guided by the wisdom of the ancestors, and may you always carry the strength of those who came before us.